Welcome back to the Working in Hockey podcast. I'm your host, Nick Bowins. As always, we are here to talk about all the different cool jobs in hockey, and today's guest is no exception. Sean Meyers, a man of many different roles, including Director of Scouting for the Pickering Panthers in the OJHL, Director of Hockey Operations for Ontario Tech University, as well as a scout for TheScout.ca. Sean, thanks for joining, man. How are you?
Hey Nick, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on here. Been following your podcast and excited to have my own episode here.
Much appreciated. And, I think this is the first episode here where we're really getting behind the scenes in a hockey scouting, hockey operations type of roles and experience here. So, super excited to chat to you about that. Like I mentioned, you got three roles on the go right now. Give me a little bit of an overview of yourself, your day to day, and then we'll dive into each specific role.
Yeah, for sure. My hockey life and role is definitely chaotic. I love being in the rinks, trying to maximize my time in there, evaluating talent at all kinds of different levels. Through the scout, we do OHL draft coverage and scouting for that, and I'm watching players all the way up through U Sports university levels. So the last few years have been definitely fortunate enough to work for a few different programs here. That have allowed me to really explore the hockey world, get to know a lot of good people, and develop my skills scouting and evaluating talent.
Absolutely. What sort of travel goes into being a scout? I think that's one of the common denominators you always hear about scouting is the hours in the rinks, the travel. You're eating a lot of rink fries. Being in the GTA there, whereabouts are you headed to, and how often are you getting out there?
Yeah, I would say the most my position with the Scout.ca this year, I covered the GTHL and OMHA for the OHL draft coverage, but um, I worked with a great team of people there, and we actually traveled around to pretty well every big tournament for the U16 loop in Ontario. So yeah, we were definitely in a lot of rinks. When I tell people, we probably saw about 150 to 200 U16 games. It was no joke. Went to all the big tournaments, regular season as much as we could, playoffs, OHL Cup. It was a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of travel though, but it was cool checking out the different ranks and following the different programs and really getting to know these players leading up to the OHL draft that took place about a month ago.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. And when you're out at these games, Sean, what's your sort of approach or methodology? Are you old school writing, handwriting notes there? Do you have a laptop or an iPad you're tracking things on? Is it all by memory? What's your approach to when you're watching a game like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the scale, we do a different kind of marketing since we're like a bit of an independent agency. We do a lot of scouting, but we also do promoting for these players as well.
Mhm.
So when we go watch a game live, we actually tend to tweet a lot of our reporting and stuff that we've seen. So I'm pretty fortunate in that sense. I don't have a great memory per se, but when I'm writing down all these things on my phone and or my iPad, like what I've seen in the games, it gives me a bit of a log for going forward, and it also kind of helps these players just to get their names out there and whatnot. And the reports help our team as well as anyone who's following our site just to get a good grasp on how these players are performing. And we've got a team of about 10 guys across the province, and we're all doing the same thing. But I would say I've definitely taken a bit of a new school approach, similar with my role in Pickering and my role in Ontario Tech. When I go to the games, I'm not necessarily penning everything I see, but I'm definitely jotting down the players who are of interest to me, guys who I want to go home and watch more film on, or guys I want to make note of on my calendar that I want to try and see them play next time they're in town, or somewhere that I can go see them without driving across the province.
Yeah, absolutely. When you do catch somebody that you think, hey, interested in them, like you said, you want to watch some film on them, you want to try to see them again. How many times do you typically aspire to see a player to make a full kind of analysis or opinion on them?
Yeah, I think it really varies, like depending on the loop you're scouting for or whatnot. Like with Ontario Tech, we watch players from all across Canada and the US, so
Mhm.
that can be difficult at times to actually see them live. Like for majority of my role, if I'm watching someone playing out in the Maritimes or out on the West Coast, I might not necessarily see them play live, but I'll watch them 5, 10 times and get a good grasp on them, and then we got a couple awesome coaches there in Curtis Hodgins and Rob Powers, and they usually make a few trips across the country in the year just to take a look at these players live in person. So I'm kind of finding guys that are of interest and worth another look, and then they're kind of given the final stamp of approval and, seeing if they fit the mold of what they want to look at. But I don't know if there's really an exact number. Like, there was players in the GTHL loop this year that I saw play 15, 20 times. And from the first time I saw them at the start of the year to the end of the year at the OHL Cup, like, they were completely different players. They developed so much at that age group. So I think it really just depends on, what you're scouting for, what level, and how old the kids are.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Talk to me a little bit more about the role director of scouting there with the Pickering Panthers. I've personally grew up near Collingwood. The Blues have been a revelation the past couple of years. Won the Centennial Cup last week, I guess there it was. I'm always impressed by the quality of play in the OJ whenever I go watch a game. Talk to me a little bit about the role, getting players interested in the league, and where you're finding most of the players from for the OJ.
Yeah, so I joined the Pickering Panthers last year. I'm fortunate enough that Rob Pearson and the ownership group in Pickering brought me on board. I've wanted to get involved with the OJ for a few years now. Um, I've just found the league pretty fascinating in the development of players, and
Yeah,
I'd been scouting that league specifically with the Ridgebacks for 5 years prior to that as well, so I was quite familiar with it. But yeah, I mean, the OJHL approach, you're looking at players from across the country as well. Um, there's a lot of love to your hometown players. Fortunate enough that the OMHA loop is pretty strong in the area at U18. So I go and watch a ton of games for them there and kind of evaluate players, compare different players at different teams and loops. Still do a little bit of travel to go to tournaments and stuff, but for the most part, just seeing regular season and playoff games. And then a little bit of the recruiting side comes in when we do start talking to these players, trying to get them to come out to our camp. And, we're leading into the season now about to hopefully sign some players. So again, it'll lean back on skills that, I've already learned, but I'm going to be learning further at this level as to, how to commit these players and, build up your program from the ground up.
sure, sure. And without spilling all your secrets and spilling all the beans there, in terms of the recruiting process there, how involved are you as a scout? At what point do you get the organization more deeply involved there when you do see a U18 player you like that?
I'm pretty fortunate. Like in the OJHL, the staff is generally relatively small. So, your front office, everyone's kind of involved in the process. Like, you're getting to know players, you're getting to chat about these guys every day or every few days. Um, you just want to stay on top of things, right? So I work very closely with Rob and our assistant coach and GM, Mitch Binney. We'll chat about these players quite frequently, and whenever I see a player in my travels, I'll let them know about them, and hopefully we all get to get eyes on them before our camps and stuff like that. And then once we're able to actually commit these players to our camps, we can evaluate who's ready to make the jump to junior A. So um, a lot of things go into it. I mean, you want to bring in good character guys as well. So that's a whole different element of it. But for evaluating the talent, I definitely get to be involved in that. And it's a lot of fun finding guys and helping them reach their next hockey goal.
Sure, sure. And I guess open-ended question, how competitive is it when it comes to recruiting players to the OJ between teams, right? A lot of central teams to the GTA there. And like you said, the loop is pretty close. A lot of guys can get out to the same games, be seeing the same players. How competitive is that scouting and recruiting team to team?
I mean, I'd say it's super, super competitive. Like you mentioned before, you got, geographically teams all over the place. You've got, what Colin did over the last years is phenomenal. And, they have no shortage of being able to recruit players. And you got the GTHL teams who, they're able to get great players as well. And there's just a lot of historic programs in the OJHL. And, I would say there's a case for every team for certain players. And it just depends on what fits best with them. If they're willing to move away from home, if they're looking to, play close, if they're wanting to play with friends, like there's a lot of factors that go into it. Um, so I would say it's definitely super competitive. It's not just about evaluating the best player. You might find five players you like, but you might only be able to actually land one or two of them. So that's why I just tend to like to be in the rinks as much as possible, just build out a huge list. And hopefully we'll be able to fill our team for the upcoming year with some good players.
Sure, sure. And I want to switch a little bit to the role with Ontario Tech University there. The Ridgebacks have had a pretty good team over the past number of years. Talk to me a little bit about the day-to-day there. I know you mentioned you're looking at players from all across the country. Recruiting from junior to U Sports is obviously different than your job scouting for junior. Talk to me a little bit about the differences and the day-to-day there.
Yeah, so that my role with Ontario Tech, that was kind of my first intro to actual hockey operations, and
Mhm.
always be grateful that Coach Curtis Hodgins bringing me on board many years ago. He gave me my foot in the door, and starting to evaluate and learn a lot about junior hockey players and whatnot. And for that team, we actually watch players from, like I mentioned, across Canada and the US. So it's been a lot of learning the different loops and different leagues and evaluating how they rank up against each other and then comparing the actual players from within. So spending a lot of time for that, at local rinks, whether it be major junior rinks or junior A rinks, but also watching a ton of video. Just with the competitiveness of that league, as you can imagine, like with some of the big schools, geographically we compete with Kingston, like Queens, Ottawa, all the teams in Montreal. I personally think we're in one of the toughest loops in all of Canada. Um, and that obviously has its geographical issues, but it also is super competitive. So um, I've always said it's kind of like a bit of a Moneyball approach we have to take in Ontario Tech. We got to find these players who are kind of undervalued, but
Yep.
they are maybe more gettable than some of the guys who are local to us. So definitely don't leave any stone unturned. We've got a great staff at Ontario Tech. There's about 6 of us now who do player evaluation, monitoring, coaching, all kinds of stuff. So um, it's a great development program we've got there. And I think one of the most underrated hockey loops in the world.
It 100% is, and that's exactly what I was gonna ask about next. Is I touched on the OJ kind of being underappreciated in terms of Ontario hockey, but when it comes to U Sports, like I don't think your casual hockey fan realizes the quality of hockey and the quality of player in U Sports these days. Talk to me a little bit about the U Sports game in general, how it is today, and where you see it headed. As some of the junior rules are changing in North America, but you look at a team like UNB the last couple of years, like there's some crazy talent in the league, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think U Sports, I mean, I tell all junior players it's the best option for you coming out of school, being able to get an education and then, keep your game and fine tune and go play professional once you've got your degree. A lot of these guys have education packages of some sort and you don't want to waste it. So no better time once you graduate junior hockey than to, go to school for 4 years, play some great hockey and you're usually working with some top-notch coaches that'll help develop your game for professional hockey. And I mean, at Ontario Tech, we haven't had many players come through the door who haven't graduated and wanted to play pro hockey that haven't. They're usually an option of some sort, whether it's, ECHL, Europe, there's all kinds of different options out there for professional hockey. And I like to say to some of the overagers in junior, like, if you don't get a pro deal right out of junior, it's not the end of the road. Like, there's usually great options ahead,
Yeah.
and use those next 4 years to make yourself a better option for pro teams. So, I think U Sports is only going to get stronger. The coverage UNB got this year, I mean, they were an absolute wagon. So, I mean, it was well deserved. But I think that's gonna, shed light on some of the talent in U Sports and hopefully only grow the brand and the product that's being produced in Canada.
Definitely no. Like I say, it's an amazing product, and I went to the University of Waterloo, and I spent some of my co-op terms with the Own Sound Attack, and every time I'd come back and go to a Waterloo game, whether they're playing Western, Laurier, Ontario Tech, it's like it's 6 of those guys I just watched last semester in the OHL. Like it's crazy when you start to recognize the paths that some of the guys took to get to U Sports. The quality of players there is it always surprises me and amazes me. There's so many good players there, and like you said, it's overlooked as a stepping stone to pro. So many of these guys do go play pro. It's just not as big or flashy historically as the NCAA route, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of people are a little bit misled when they're in junior hockey that NCAA is the only way to go. Like, if you don't get drafted to the OHL, like you're waiting for an NCAA deal. But in my opinion, a lot of U Sports programs are crossing a lot of those NCAA programs now, in the sense that I think they're better options. Like, you'll forever still have your top end NCAA Division I programs, but I think, for the amount of money it costs to go down there and play, a lot of these U Sports programs are the way to go these days.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And you touched on the role with the Ridgebacks there being your first real role in the hockey ops side of things. I know you also worked for the Arizona Coyotes in a data analytics hockey ops kind of role. Talk to me a little bit about that. Obviously, working at the NHL level is something that a lot of our listeners are going to be very interested in. Tell me about that gig.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a one-off opportunity I did for a season, and it was essentially doing video analytics
Mhm.
for the NHL draft. So it was cool evaluating a lot of players, and that's when the Coyotes were kind of huge into the analytic metrics and stuff. So was doing a lot of watching a lot of film, and building out a lot of spreadsheets, and then later analyzing it to compare players. It was a different approach that was taken that year, and it was a lot of fun looking at some of these players and how they stacked up. And it's kind of cool looking back now to see how their analytics compared to how these players are now, if they're in the NHL, and if they are, how they're doing. So um, it was fun. It was good getting to know that stuff, and I do find myself in a bit of a better position with the data analytics stuff now because of it. And more than anything, it allows me to understand it better. So it was definitely a great opportunity, and I'm definitely thankful for it.
Very interesting. Yeah, were you doing that remotely from here, or were you down in Arizona? What was the setup there?
Yeah, no, I was at home, and
Cool.
I was probably watching somewhere between like 5 to 7 hours of game film a day, just going through it, and it was pretty cool to do. And you're watching players from all over the place, watching a lot of CHL film. You'd be watching in a nice rink, and then they'd send me a player playing somewhere in Europe, and looks like they're playing in a men's league rink. So watching players from all over, and it was a lot of fun. Pretty cool to dive a little bit deeper into this and get a better understanding of what these teams are looking for when it comes to certain players playing certain positions.
Yeah, taking you even further back memory lane here. The first role on your LinkedIn, Sean, is an internship with MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, one of the more highly coveted internships or companies, obviously, for a large portion of our listenership here in Ontario. Talk to me about that role, getting that role, experiencing that role, and what you took away from it.
Yeah, it was a super cool opportunity to do that. That was in my final year of university. Uh, Fortunate enough to do that 4 month internship in the Leafs front office there. It was many moons ago now, but it was right around the time when Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas came in with the
Yep.
Leafs. Got to know them pretty well, and learned a lot about the professionalism of working in pro hockey, and um, just day to day spending it with the professional hockey team. Got to do a lot of cool things, and be a part of everything from game days to team practices, team media events, scrums. Just learned a lot about the business, and um, just my getting to know a lot about media in general. And I think that, this position, it wasn't exactly like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in hockey at the time. So I took on this position and just applied, and got fortunate enough to get through the process and do it. But I do believe that, doing a role like that did propel me to a few other positions,
Sure.
just people being able to see on my resume that I did work for MLSC for 4 months. And, it comes up in a lot of interviews, like people just asking questions about what I did there, and how I enjoyed the experience. So while I may not have, envisioned a long-term career in PR or media, I think that, it did get my foot in the door to hockey to some extent.
Totally, totally. No, I think that's a great way to put it. And I was going to transition to some more general questions here to wrap us up, and that answer perfectly gets us there. You mentioned you didn't really know what you wanted to do in hockey when you got that role. When did you find out what you do want to do in hockey? Have you figured all that out? And kind of how are you tracking on that right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, I mean, I think my ideal is always kind of shifting. Like, I've
Yep.
gotten to learn a lot about different leagues and loops and stuff like that. Just joining, Pickering and the OJ last year, it opened a lot of doors for me and, showed me a whole different side of hockey that I had never got to experience, which I'm quite frankly really enjoying being a part of a junior hockey team. Um, I think even going back further, I was working in a different form of junior hockey, working in the front office in sales for the Oshawa Generals, and they had a great program there, a great team of staff, but I started to realize that I enjoyed being involved with the game a lot more than I enjoyed like being at the game. So that kind of was one of the trigger points for me, at least, where I was like, you know what, I want to, jump through whatever hoops it takes to work for an actual hockey team doing hockey ops. And I mean, it's not for everyone, and you got to take all kinds of different steps to, you know, take chances to get there. But um, that was when it really clicked for me that I wanted to be a part of hockey ops with the team. And you can see from my chaotic hockey past and even my day to day now, I don't have it all figured out perfectly, but I enjoy going to the rinks every day and I enjoy being a part of some great teams and, building out some great hockey programs. And I think for anyone like focused on finding what's right for them, they'll have a good idea. It'll just feel right. And, like people always say, it won't feel like work. And that's the biggest thing for me is whenever I go to the rinks, it doesn't feel like I'm actually working. It just feels like I'm doing something I love. So it's quite enjoyable.
No, well said, well said. I often think about that phrase, like it doesn't feel like you're working. It doesn't feel like work when I named this brand working in hockey. Living in hockey or kind of enjoying hockey doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but that's exactly it. We're all trying to find something that doesn't feel like work, right? Parlaying off of that, what career advice have you gotten at your different stops along the way, Sean, that's helped you the most that you'd want to share with others? Any particular items or pieces of advice there?
I mean, the one that really clicks with me, and I always welcome calls from people who are looking to get into the hockey industry or they're looking just to, pick someone's brain. And the biggest thing I always say to people is like, just take chances and take every opportunity that comes to you. Like looking back on it, I did a lot of different hockey roles, whether they're volunteer or internship or stuff that may not have been exactly what I wanted to do, but it helped me meet a lot of great people and it's helped me figure out what I want to do. So I just think there's a lot of value in that. Like get involved, meet people, build your network. The hockey world is relatively small. I mean, as big as it is geographically, like pretty well everyone knows everyone. So just get to know people. And yeah, no opportunity is too small for you. That's something that I've always thought as well is if I think it's too small, like it's probably not. So just always take chances.
Totally. Yeah, everything's a stepping stone, whether it's direct, indirect, maybe you're gonna bounce off of it and end up somewhere else. Every step along the way is still a stepping stone. Last one here from me, Sean, gonna put you on the spot a little bit. As a scout working in hockey ops, have there been any players with Pickering, the Ridgebacks, the Coyotes, that you were absolutely adamant this guy is a great player and he's panned out?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of players. I mean,
Well, that
not
means you're doing something right then.
yeah, not I think there's tons of talent out there. I mean, you watch guys enough, you kind of get a good pulse for how they are, and it is all about taking the chances to some extent, especially when they're jumping from tier to tier. But I've been pretty happy with the development of a lot of players. And, for every good one, you might get a couple bad ones, but um, that's all part of the game, I would say. So, no, I definitely met a lot of great players and, happy about a lot of their player development. And I don't want to say one name in particular, but yeah, I would say I've definitely seen a lot of players, especially at the Ridgebacks. We bring, guys in when they're finishing junior hockey, and I've seen, countless ones of them now graduate, have great university careers, and now some of them are still playing pro hockey. So um, definitely happy for them, and happy for the program that we get to play a part in it.
Good answer. Good answer. Well, Sean, this has been a blast. Thank you for sharing insight into your roles, your career, your journey so far. Like you said, we're all still figuring it out, and these are all stepping stones along the way. But as you mentioned, anybody looking to get into the world of scouting and hockey ops, good guy to reach out to here. Where can they find you, Sean?
Yeah, you can find me most likely on LinkedIn, just Sean Meyers, or if you're on Twitter or X, you can look me up as well. I'm at Sean Meyers on there as well.
Perfect. And what's the Twitter handle that they can find some of the scouting reports on Twitter there?
Yeah, TheScout.ca. So it's at TheScout.ca, all words. So yeah, we got a lot of good coverage there, especially if you're an OHL fan or just a junior hockey fan in general. We'll have you all set up for next year's draft with the 2009 age group.
Perfect. Perfect. That's where you can find all of Sean's brain dumps on players, guys. Sean, thanks so much for this. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and the free weekly newsletter. We'll see you next week.